Really something that affects a dog, isn't it, Helena?
My dog is allergic to those.
If there was no God, nothing would exist.
Well, I disagree.
Well,
I don't know that. I don't know that. How would you know that?
Well, we exist, but something caused us to exist. You cannot have an infinite regression of causes. I can explain that if you guys want, but there has to be a single uncaused cause. The single uncaused cause is either personal or it's impersonal. So if you have an impersonal cause, it has to possess the necessary and sufficient conditions to cause the next effect. Now, when we apply this, for example, to the universe that came into existence, that means something caused it to come into existence. Whatever caused it to come into existence was either personal or impersonal. When you only have two options out of all existence, the thing and not the thing, it's called a true dichotomy. There's a rule in logic. There's a rule in logic called the disjunctive syllogism. When you only have two options to account for something and one is negated, the other is automatically verified. So either God created the universe or it's not the case that God created the universe. We have God or not God. So that's it. Personal or not personal. So if we look at...
Why couldn't the absolute be impersonal?
I'm sorry? What?
Why couldn't the absolute be impersonal?
I'll explain why. Let's just assume, just for the sake of quick argumentation, that the thing that caused the universe to exist is impersonal. Okay. And let's also assume that it's always existed as impersonal, because that's what it is. It's just what it is. It has a nature, it has an essence. So if it's impersonal, then it had to possess what's called the necessary and sufficient conditions to bring the universe into existence. So let me explain what that is. I'll illustrate it. So we want to move a stone, and we have a flat surface the stone is on. We have a fulcrum, maybe a smaller stone, and we use a lever, a big bar, and so we can pull down on that lever and on that little stone and pry the big stone and move it. So the small stone is called a fulcrum, F-U-L-C-R-U-M, fulcrum. So let's just say, hypothetically, that it takes exactly 25 pounds of downward force on the end of the bar in order to move the big boulder, okay? So if we had 24 pounds, we would have the necessary conditions, but they would not be sufficient. We have the necessary conditions: the flat surface, the boulder, the fulcrum, the bar, and a force, a weight, let's say, counterweight. So that's necessary but not sufficient to get it done. But if we were to put 25 pounds or up or more, then we have what's called necessary and sufficient conditions. And therefore, whenever you have the necessary and sufficient conditions in this scenario, the result is necessarily automatic. If conditions are met, it's automatic. It's going to happen. Now, when something has the necessary and sufficient conditions, it means it's automatically going to occur. If the thing is impersonal that preceded the universe, it would have to either possess or not possess the necessary and sufficient conditions. That's all. That's it. It does or doesn't. If it doesn't, then the universe will never be made.
Right.
But if it does, the universe is going to be made.
Okay, so what are the necessary properties? You're saying personal is one of them, right?
No, I didn't say. We're talking about impersonal. So here's the problem.
Yeah, you're proving it has to be personal.
If the thing that preceded the universe existed eternally, then it eternally possessed the necessary and sufficient conditions. But if it eternally possessed the necessary and sufficient conditions, then the universe would have been created an eternity ago. But that would mean that the universe is infinitely old. But the universe is not infinitely old. So therefore, it could not be that the thing that caused the universe to exist was impersonal.
Yeah, that argument is fallacious.
Why is it fallacious?
Well, first of all, are you suggesting that God is in time?
What I was doing was showing you the impossibility of the non-personal position. That's all I was doing. What you did was ignored the argument and the logic and went to a different direction. So, germane to what I raised. If you're going to ask a question about the argument.
Well, if your argument has incoherent presuppositions, then it doesn't follow. So that's logic. So what was being targeted there was some presupposition in your
well, I could go presup on you. Presup is very effective. I'm just showing you.
No. I'm saying there was an assumption. There was an assumption made by your argument, right? And that assumption is incoherent, and so that's why that was.
What assumption is incoherent, Derek? What assumption is incoherent?
Well, that's why you were asked whether or not.
What assumption? I didn't assume God existed in this. I simply showed you that the impersonal position doesn't work logically. That's all I did. So, Derek, show me where what assumption it was that I had that's incorrect.
Well, the reason you were asked the question is to figure out whether or not that account presupposed that God was in time. And so that's why that question was asked, and that's why it's pertinent for you to answer that question.
Did anybody in the room hear me presuppose God exists? You know I do, but did I state it as part of the argument? I said it's either the case that we have, and I've just given you what's called a true dichotomy. God exists, or it's not the case that God exists. The universe is either personal, or it's not the case that it's personal. That's all. I said personal, impersonal. Let's work with the impersonal. Let's work with the characteristics of an impersonal cause. And logically, it doesn't work. If it's impossible for the impersonal cause, then you have to go over to the other side, a personal cause of the universe. That's the logic that's required.
I'm just explaining why the question was asked to you. Because you want to say that there's a personal cause, right? And so the question is asked, if you're presupposing that God is in time, because you're suggesting
it has problems with it because you haven't defined what it means for God to be, or God to be in time, or God to be outside of time. And I'm assuming you're an atheist, so you'd have to ask me about the definition of God and abilities and such, because I'm only going to ultimately defend the Christian God. But what I've done, which is pretty typical with atheists when I present this argument to them, is they can't refute the argument, so they go back into something else. Now, what I've shown you is that the impersonal position cannot be a rational starting point or explanation for the existence of the universe.
Yeah, we're not interested in the grandstanding and in you repeating the claims, right? Now, if God is in time, right?
What does it mean for God to be in time?
Sorry?
What does it mean for God to be in time? Please explain that.
Temporal being.
If you could explain it, I'd be grateful. I'd be happy to hear that, because I want to know what you're going to be. If you're going to make an assertion and build a case on the assertion, I'm going to ask you to define a little bit better than what does it mean for God to be in time? Are you saying he's restricted to time?
No, his relation is to temporal events, right? Like he knows what when now is, and he's in time. He knows what time it is now.
Okay, in that sense, I would agree. Yes, he knows what time it is here.
That's not what
he knows where I am in my house.
I'm saying that he exists. I'm saying if he exists, right, outside of time, right, and causes the universe to exist, right, then your argument wouldn't apply to something impersonal that existed outside of time and could cause the universe.
That's a non sequitur on your part, Snow. Look, if you're going to tell me that God exists outside of time, you should know I teach Christians about argumentation. I say, don't say that. I tell Christians not to say that. And the reason I do is because I say, what does it mean to be outside of time? We don't know what that means. no way of saying, oh, I can understand what outside time is, so I'm going to argue from that. You don't know what it, hold on. You don't know what it is. You don't know.
Stop it.
Look.
Okay. Stop talking.
Oh, I thought.
Stop.
You don't want me to speak?
Stop.
Okay, go ahead. Tell me when it's okay for me to talk. Go ahead.
I'll tell you when it's okay. Okay? Now, you've got a choice, right? Either the universe was caused by something outside of time or something inside of time, right? Now, if it was caused by something outside of time, your argument doesn't apply, right? Now, if it's caused by something inside of time, right, the same objection that you make to an impersonal cause applies to a personal cause, because something has to explain the fact, right, that it happened in one moment in time rather than another, right? And that's why your argument is fallacious. Okay, now you can talk.
All right. Now, if you're going to try and make a logical argument, you need to make sense in order to do that first. If you're going to say that one of your premises is God is outside of time, if you and I were in a formal debate, I would pin you, define for me, and explain for me what it means to be outside of time. We're all waiting. Go ahead.
That didn't address the objection, right? What I said was, and I'll repeat the objection.
Hold on a second.
Sorry, I wasn't done talking. I'll repeat the objection since you didn't listen very carefully when I went through it the first time, okay? There's a dichotomy, a true dichotomy, as you like to say, right? Which is that what caused the universe was either outside of time or inside of time, right? Now, if it was outside of time, your objection wouldn't apply, right? Something impersonal that was outside of time caused the universe to exist, your objection wouldn't apply, right? Now, the other horn of the dichotomy is that what caused the universe to exist. And let's just keep in mind, right, that you made a whole bunch of premises that I don't have to accept, right? That the universe has to have a cause, right? That there can't be an infinite series of causes, all things that you can't defend, right? But I'm just going to grant you that for the sake of argument, right? And show what a piece of numbskullery your argument is, even if I grant those premises, right? Now, if it's something that is inside of time that caused the universe to exist, your objection would apply just as well to a personal being as to an impersonal one, because on your account, something would have to explain, right, why the universe came into being at one time rather than another. That objection applies just as much to a personal being as to an impersonal being, right? Now, what I'd like you to do is address the objection. Okay, you can talk now.
Is anybody else interested in having a discussion? Because I really don't want to discuss something with someone who can't think critically and is exceedingly rude. I want to have a polite conversation with someone who's not going to result to, calling me.
Why did you combine those then? You could have just said he was being rude. He does think critically. He just raises objections.
No, he's not. No, trust me.
Not wanting to respond.
He's not. I've already explained why. Let me explain why. He's making an argument. He has premises in the argument. I've asked him to define and justify the premise. He ignores that and continues. What does it mean to exist outside of time? He used the statement. He made the proclamation. I want to know what that actually means so we can have a discussion.
Is it a true dichotomy or not?
He's not able to do that, and so what he does is tries to silence me.
Don't you already have a conception of something existing out of time? Why is this a problem for you? You don't even need to. You don't even need to. It is a dichotomy, is it not, Matt?
So, as I was saying, that what he's doing is a problem in argumentation.
Yeah, you're just ignoring questions, Matt. You're not engaging.
I teach the Christians not to say the statement because it's not good argumentation. You don't want to base a premise on something that you don't know what it is.
You're bogging down the question by asking for a definition that you already have a conception for.
This is all irrelevant. He doesn't have to take that horn of the dilemma.
You're being rude. Excuse me.
Yeah.
If you have a premise, then the premise needs to be justified. You don't build an argument on a premise that isn't justified. So, can anybody tell me, seriously, what does it mean to exist outside of time? And the reason this is a problem is because we can only relate to a time reference, a linear time reference. We have no experience of what it means to not be in that reference. Therefore, it's not possible for us to say, this is what it actually is. We don't know. To build an argument on something that you don't know what it is not a good place to start. That's why I tell my Christians, don't do that.
Great.
It's not just you guys. I say, don't do that. It's not just you guys. I say that Christians don't do it. So his criticism is not founded in logic because its premises to begin with are not justified.
Great. You're rejecting the first horn of the dilemma.
In order for all the premises to be justified, you would need an infinite regress of justifications.
Now, this guy, Snow, I think his name was. Let me ask you something, Snow. Is the universe infinitely old?
Doesn't matter. The point is,
don't you know?
If you're rejecting the first horn of the dilemma, right, then you need to address the second horn of the objection.
I've addressed that your premises are not founded, and therefore building on an unfounded premise.
All you did was say that you rejected the first horn of the dilemma.
It is relevant because part of the argument was that the universe had a beginning. So I asked you, this is part of the argument. Why are you being so difficult? I can tell you why. I know why you are. But let me ask you this question for everybody to hear. Did the universe have a beginning, or is it eternal?
It's irrelevant, right? You're the one who made the argument.
Is not irrelevant because the argument is based on the idea that the universe had a beginning. So for you to say that it's irrelevant is really
shut up while I'm talking.
Not a very good logical point for you.
Stop over talking.
It is part of the argument for you to say it's
stop over talking.
Stop over talking.
Yeah, stop over talking. Okay. I asked you.
Does it have a beginning or not have a beginning?
Stop talking while I'm talking, Dodger. Okay. I asked you at the outset whether God was in time or not.
You don't know what you're doing.
Shut up while I'm talking.
Now, look, dude. Look.
I asked you at the outset. Stop over talking me. I asked you at the outset whether God was in time or not, right? And you couldn't even answer the fucking question, right? So fine, I posed it as shut up while I'm talking.
You are such an amateur. You don't know what you're doing.
Shut up.
You make yourself look.
Shut the fuck up while I'm talking. You'll get your turn. Okay? So you conveniently dodged, right? Because you understood that you wouldn't be able to defend your claims, right? If you had to answer that question, right? So I dealt with your dodging by posing the objection as a simple dichotomy, right? Because it's a straightforward logical fact, right? That either that either the cause of the universe, if there is one, which I'm only granting for the sake of the argument, a premise you can't possibly defend, right? But let's grant it for the sake of argument. If there is a cause to the universe, it's either in time or outside of time. Whether or not something being outside of time makes any fucking sense at all, right? It's going to be one or the other.
Way to go, man.
If you can't make sense of something being outside of time, dumbass, right? That just means you're rejecting the first horn of the dilemma. And stop over-talking me for the nth time.
Stop whining like a little boy.
Stop over-talking me for the nth time. Okay, so that's fine. If you want to reject the fucking first horn of the dilemma, be my guest, right? That just means that you think that the cause of the universe has to be in time. Let's grant that for the sake of argument. The objection that you made to an impersonal cause inside of time, right, applies just as well to a personal being, because on your account, something would have to explain why God created the universe at one time rather than another, right? That is the objection that you made about an impersonal cause, right? So now what I'm asking you to do is, rather than ask me questions about my view, right, is address the fucking objection, Dodger. Okay, you can
cannot
talk now.
justify his premises. Why is he completing or trying to complete an argument that has no foundation? Simple.
In order for all of one's premises
right? Like what are you talking about? Like you were given a dichotomy, right? And you said that you gave an objection to an impersonal, and then you were asked why that objection couldn't just apply to the personal. You didn't answer that question. You just avoided it.
You see, the reason I won't jump ahead and skip is because it would be to grant that his premise has validity to it. I don't do that.
Gotcha.
So here's the thing. Look. He makes a premise, and this is a mistake Christians do. It's a mistake atheists do. This is not just me attacking the atheists. For anybody to say, well, God is outside of time, is a non-statement. You don't know what it means. I don't know what it means. And here's the thing. If you're going to build an argument on something that you can't define and explain, tell me how the argument is sound. That's the problem. And that's what he was doing. He said right from the beginning, God is outside of time. If he's outside of time, then, well, hold on. First premise. What does that mean?
Look, it doesn't matter, right?
Yes, it does.
No, I'll explain why. Look, when I contradict you, you can't just, without letting me explain, you can't just contravene me back, right? It doesn't make any sense. You can't engage in dialogue if you're not going to allow for an explanation of me explaining why it doesn't matter. Right? That doesn't
explain why it doesn't matter that a premise must be justified and true.
Okay, because it doesn't matter because it's formed in a disjunction. So if you point out that one premise is incoherent, then that means that you just fall on the other disjunct, right? The other disjunct is just true because the one disjunct is false by your lights. If God can't be outside of time because that's incoherent, that means that side of this disjunction is false, and then you fall on the other side of this disjunction that God is.
But I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I didn't say God can't be outside of time.
Okay, so then God can be outside of time.
No, I didn't say. No. You don't hear me. You're not hearing. I didn't say he was. I didn't say he wasn't. You never heard me say that. What I asked was, what does it even mean? Because if you don't know what it means, you can't say he is or outside of time, is or is not.
It's a true dichotomy. Those are the only options.
Well, it would be a true dichotomy to say the statement God is either inside of time or it's not the case that he's inside of time.
Yeah, that's the dichotomy.
Okay, that would be a true dichotomy. Now, fine.
That's what it is.
But no, you understand. It is a true dichotomy even to say, in any case when you say the thing and not the thing, it's always a true dichotomy. It's, I'm holding, okay, let's see. I have a hard drive in my left hand, right? And I do, I'm holding right now. So I'm holding a hard drive in my hand, or it's not the case that I'm holding a hard drive in my hand. That's a true dichotomy. I'm touching the chair, or it's not the case I'm touching a chair. Fine, all that is just a true dichotomy.
Yeah? Why don't
if I were to say to you, look, guys, I'm going to give you an argument. God is the ethereal being who exists interdimensionally, both in and outside of time always. All you got to do is say, can you explain interdimensionality and inside and outside of time so I can know what it means? I'd say, I don't know what it means. That's what it is. Would you accept that?
Look, it doesn't matter because I don't understand why you're just ignoring this, right? Like,
I'm not ignoring it.
The point was...
You're ignoring it.
No, the point was that if your objection is sound against an impersonal being, then it's just as sound against a personal being.
No, it's not. No, he doesn't know his logic. He doesn't think. We didn't get that far.
That was what the argument was. So
no, he doesn't know what he's doing. Look, he's a good talker, but he's not a good thinker. All right. I'll explain why it doesn't work with a personal issue. You'll explain why?
The argument. So let me explain the argument, right? So, all right. So let's just slowly work through what your objection to it being impersonal is. Let's work through that.
Okay.
So what's
did you understand the argument I raised?
No. What's the objection?
Objection to what?
To it being an impersonal cause of the universe or whatever.
Okay. I said the universe is either caused or it's not caused. The universe came into existence, so therefore it was caused. Would you agree?
I'm asking, I don't care about that. I'm asking what the objection is to it being an impersonal cause. What's the objection that you rendered?
I was trying to see what level of understanding you have in the argument that you want me to.
Look, I don't want any of the. I'm just going to grant you whatever you need to get to the point where you're rendering the argument for against the impersonal cause. So whatever you think is true, I'm granting for the sake of argument, right? Whatever you think is true, I'm granting for the sake of argument. It's only until you get to the point where you're defending the objection against the impersonal cause. That's what I'm interested in. So what's the objection against the impersonal cause?
Now, can I lay this out, or are you going to tell me I can't do it the way I want to do it?
If you're defending the objection against the impersonal cause, then I'll allow you to go on. If
you will allow me. That's nice of you. Thank you very much to allow me that.
Allow you to go on if you decide to defend the objection against the impersonal cause.
I would already be at the place where we'd be disagreeing in the issue if you had just let me do what I do.
Well, I'm not going to let you do what you're going to do. So
okay, if you don't want me to, you ask me a question, you don't want me to answer it the way I want to answer it. You want me to answer it the way you want to answer it. What is wrong with you guys?
Look, I
challenge too much.
What I'm asking you to argue for, not for things I'm not.
You're arguing about arguing. Why don't you just let me do what I do and show you?
So stop arguing about arguing and just present your objection and just.
You're the one doing that.
Stop arguing.
Let me ask you a question. Let's start one step at a time. Is that okay with you?
Your question. I'm not interested in your question. I'm interested in
all right. Okay. I tell you what, guys. I'm going to go take off, and because this is just ridiculous.
Yeah. You're not presenting your argument. Just present your argument.
I'm not allowed to present my argument because I'm just.
I will give you free reign. I will give you.
No, you don't give me anything.
Yeah, I'll give you free reign.
What you've been is exceedingly rude.
He ran away.
He was in trouble and he knew it.
Your boy Darth Dawkins up in the hood. What up, homie?